Hey everyone. Okay, so I've been wanting to make these videos for a little while now, last few weeks or a couple weeks. First, I want to say that please feel free to make any comments you want underneath. I'm going to do my very best to ignore them right now, ignore them while I'm making this video just because I want to talk and get all this out. But I promise I will read everything after and comment when I can. But I'm just, so if I don't answer anything you're saying while you're on here, that's why. I'm just trying to ignore it. The other thing I want to say right away is that everything I'm about to talk about here is from my own personal experience. These are my thoughts, my feelings. This does not, excuse me, this does not represent all depressed people, okay? But this is my own journey, and I feel this is very important to talk about. So I put the hashtag Let's Talk because this is, Mental Health Month when everybody's talking about things and whatnot. And I think this is a very important topic that we don't talk nearly enough about. And I'm not embarrassed by this. I'm not ashamed by this. I am not well. I am broken. I need help. I need to be fixed. And I can't be the only one out there. I know I'm not. Now I know. I mean, I never thought I was alone. But okay, so what I want to talk about here is, you guys know me. Some of you better than others. Some of you hardly at all. But I've been suffering from depression since I was 9 years old, and I just turned 42. So since I was 9, and I was only officially diagnosed about 10 years ago when I got my great doctor and amazing counselor. This all got officially diagnosed. But I have been suffering since I was 9. I was considered a moody kid, but that's not what it was at all. So I have been... Okay, let's talk up to 2017. So in between from the time I was 9, what year was that? 77, 86. So from 86 to 2016, I have had suicidal thoughts 4 times. The first time I was 13. Nobody knew about it. Not a single person. I didn't tell anybody. It was a fleeting moment, I want to say, because it was just in that moment I wanted things to end. It was bad. I was bullied, big time bullied, in elementary school. And that particular day, I can remember it clear as day. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And the only reason I didn't do anything that day was because of the date that it was. It was a particular family thing, and well, it just couldn't be done on that day. So I guess that's what made me pass it over. And then I just sucked it up and dealt with it the best I could. I mean, I was a teenager, so, moody teen. And then really, the depression's come and go for over the years and stuff, but I didn't really feel like I wanted things to end again until 2014. And I had a really bad evening, and I was on the phone with Henry, actually. And I'm sorry, Henry, if I'm sharing too much, but people need to know about this stuff. So I was on the phone with Henry and having kind of my breakdown and not doing good and making certain comments, and he was like, okay, you know what? I'm coming over right now. Don't do anything. So he came over. So there was actually him and somebody else that were involved in this. And he came over, stayed with me. Excuse me. Sorry, bit of a frog. Gonna keep clearing. And he stayed with me that night, and we talked about things and stuff. And okay, the other person involved did nothing about it. The next day, I guess they were just relieved that I didn't do anything about it and figured, okay, good, didn't do anything, we're fine, we're going to move past this. I was asked if I had thought I was going to hurt myself, and I said, I don't know, maybe. And they just kind of went, oh, okay. And that was it. Did nothing. Didn't ask me any questions, nothing. So, but Henry made me promise that I would go see my counselor ASAP. Excuse me. Hang on, I'm gonna keep. Okay. So Henry made me promise that I would go see my counselor right away and promise that I would tell him everything. And I did. And my counselor's name is Chris. Chris and I talked everything through at that time and figured out ways to deal with it and to keep going. So then that was 2014. So the next time was April of 2017. And again, the depression kind of took hold. Things were feeling hopeless again and whatnot. But this time it was a very good friend of mine. she was chatting with me, and I guess she recognized some signs, some things that I was saying, and she knew the questions to ask. And so she started asking me things like, do you have a plan? And the previous times before that, I had no plan. It was just, I just wanted things to be change or be done. But this time I had actually started to have a plan. So when I told her that, she said, okay, we need to go to the Crisis Response Center, the CRC. And she said, I'm going to come and get you right away. So back in April of 2017, after I went through all of this, I made a video then. So some of you might have seen that video, because from there I ended up at the Crisis Stabilization Unit for a week, where it was just a place to go, recharge my batteries, get a little bit of help that I needed, find out about some more services out there. And that really helped. So that did the trick at the time. So that was then. That following November 2017, I started spiraling again. This time worse, getting darker, really bad place. And this time I told Henry about it right away. I told him, and I just told him that was it. I was done. I can't go anymore. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I feel hopeless. I feel like nothing's going to change. Excuse me. He was naturally very upset, very worried about me, and because a lot of people don't understand the relationship Henry and I have, we're still best friends. Doesn't matter about what's happened in the past and stuff. That's a whole other topic, but we're still best friends, and he loves me and I love him, and we always will. And he said, Stacey, you can't go anywhere. He said, I need you in my life. And he said, and the scary thing is, at the time when he said that, he said, I still need you around. You're my best friend, and I still want you in my life. When he said that, I looked at him and I said, then come with me. I said, let's just do it together. Whew, I get emotional just even talking about that part, because if he had said yes, I wouldn't be here right now. Or if he'd even hesitated, I probably would have been able to talk him into it, I think. But he didn't hesitate, not even a second. He's like, no, that's not happening. How that man is so strong, for all he's been through in his life too, I don't know. But he's the strongest person. And he said, no, that's not happening. So again, made me promise I'd go see my counselor right away. I was telling him everything. We came up with a plan then. I ended up staying with Henry for a month, or it was almost close to 2 months, I think. Just to be around somebody, be around people and stuff, and to keep safe, and to work on a future plan and stuff. And we switched meds. My doctor and I switched meds. And that was a really rough time too. This is a really tough thing to do. When you switch meds, as most of you I'm sure know or don't know, you can't just go off of one cold turkey and start another one right away. It doesn't work that way. Your body does not like that. So you have to slowly wean off of one and then work your way up to another one. Well, that is a really critical time in there, and that is a really dangerous time in there. My one friend, she says that she truly believes people should be hospitalized for that period of time alone, because of how bad it can get. Excuse me again, sorry. I just have some tea here. Okay, she said that people should be hospitalized in that time, and I kind of agree with her, because that is when I hit the most bottom in November of 2017, was when we were doing that, switching from one med to the other, because I didn't have enough of the first one in my system, and I hadn't really started the next one yet, so I was in a super dark place. But we did get my medication switched, and it seemed to help, and being around people for the bit helped, and we moved forward. So then let's skip ahead to, so those were the 4 times. 4 times? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, those were the 4 times from 1986 to 2017 that I had been feeling suicidal in my life. Now let's skip ahead to November of 2018. 2018, I should say, was not a horrible year. This is the thing. It's not like I had a traumatic event happen. It's not like I had some big trigger thing happen. I have been suffering from this since I was 9 years old, for a very long time. And it doesn't take too much for things to spiral and whatnot. The thing with me is, my biggest issue is that I don't recognize when it's spiraling that fast. I know when I feel blah, I know when I don't feel great, and it kind of lasts and stuff, but then all of a sudden I hit a point where it gets like really low. And over the past years, people have recognized it or people have caught it. Well, this time, November of 2018, no, nobody caught it, and not by their fault at all. This time it was all on me. I have been told I am the queen of the super face, because that's how I was raised. That's how I was brought up to be, is that, you just smile and put on a happy face and don't let anybody know what's wrong. And you don't talk about, the issues and stuff outside the home. And that is the worst possible advice ever. You cannot always put on a happy face and smile and just think that's going to make everything okay. I mean, you want a prime example? Look at Robin Williams, right? Who would have ever thought that? Happiest person ever? No, not at all. So in the past, when people have found out that, I was depressed or other things, they said, but you always seem so happy. I had no idea. That's right. You didn't have any idea. And this time, people really had no idea. So November hit, mid-November, whatever, and I started to notice things were getting worse. And okay, I'm gonna be completely honest in these videos here. I am a social drinker, right? I like to have a few drinks when I go out with friends and stuff. No big deal with that. I started drinking every day in November. I had gone out to a friend's place for, a couple of Fridays in a row, and we had some drinks and stuff, and, it was called Fireball Friday, so, anybody could join. And I know some people don't drink, so you may not understand this, but I'm going to explain. When you drink, you get past that buzz stage and you get to the next stage, which is, inhibitions are gone, you're feeling good, life is great, everything is wonderful, and there's that stage, and then you move on to the next stage of, being really drunk and everything else, and keeps going. Everybody's different, of course, but this is me. This is how it works. Buzzed, and then I get to this feeling great stage. So for the couple Fridays that we did this, I got to that stage and I was loving it. This was the first time in a long time that I felt nothing bad. I felt everything was fine. Everything was good. So I started to think, well, this is the only way I know to make this feeling happen. So I started drinking at home by myself, alone. Sometimes it was one drink a night. Sometimes it was 4 or 5. Whatever it took just to get me to that level. Not past. I was not out to get drunk or anything like that. I didn't want to be buzzed. I wanted the feeling nothing stage. And I accomplished that every day. But I was drinking quite a bit each day. And that's not me. That's not me at all. I never drink alone. I'm a social drinker. So I knew that was wrong. I absolutely knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew it wasn't the right answer. I knew it wasn't the solution. But at the time, that's what helped me feel better, or feel nothing, which was better than feeling what I was feeling, which was awful, hopelessness, blackness. And it just kept getting worse. And so as it kept going, my mood kept decreasing. And by this point, I was at the point where I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. To be perfectly okay, I've had a lot of people say, you could have come and talked to me, I'm always here for you, Stacey, you're so loved. And not to sound all egotistical or anything, but I know how loved I am. I do. I know how blessed I am. I know how lucky I am to have people in my life. I really do. But this was not the issue. I was at the point where I didn't feel like anything could help at all. Talking to anybody, I didn't feel I literally figured there was nothing that would help at this point. And it was this overwhelming blackness and pain. Like every day I was just suffering in my head. It was just awful. It was horrible. And I wanted it to end. And I knew that if I talked to somebody about it, if I talked to Henry or if I talked to a couple of my other friends, I knew that they would try and talk me out of it. And at this point, I didn't want to be talked out of it this time. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional through this, but it was that bad that I remember stopping and thinking that if I went through with this, it would all be over. The pain, the sadness, the depression, the struggling, the worrying, the stress, the guilt, everything would be done. And, sorry. And I know people say that suicide is selfish. But if you've never been in this position, this darkness, this black spot, you can't say that, because the love you have for the people in your life and that they have for you is not enough. It is not enough to make you want to keep going. It should be, and that's the whole point of love, right? And everything is to keep, to have this in your life, but it's not enough. I knew what this was going to do to Henry. I knew what this was going to do to my other friends. But it didn't matter at that point, because in my opinion, you'd all move on. You'd all get past this. Excuse me. And I don't mean to sound glib about that, because I don't mean to say, okay, yeah, you'll wake up one day and it would be fine. No, I know that this would be devastating for quite a while, because I know how it would be if someone did that to me. But in that moment, at that time, when you feel this way, you just want the pain to go away and nothing else matters. And when you get to the point where you actually feel peaceful and relaxed and relieved, knowing this is going to be over soon, well, that's bad. That's really bad, right? So this time I actually had a plan. I had a date. I had everything figured out. And even me, typical me, the planner, I even started making to-do lists of what needed to be done before. Nothing was happening before December 11th. I still had business to conduct and everything, even though I was making mistakes left, right, and center and screwing up constantly. Didn't realize how sick I was at the time. But I still had business to do because it was Christmas time. And December 11th was the 19-year anniversary of the day Henry and I met. And December 11th has always been a very important day to us, right from the beginning, right through till now, even though we're not together anymore. We celebrate it every year. It's a very big deal. So nothing was happening before then. I knew this. This was my plan. I was determined. This is much longer than I had planned on this part, but it's important that all of this comes out. People really need to know. So it was November 25th, Sunday. I was sitting around having some drinks, trying to get to that numb feeling again. And I guess I must have had one or two too many, because I got past that numb feeling and felt more depressed than I'd ever felt, ever. And spent the whole night crying by myself, not talking to anybody, not calling anybody. And at this point, again, I already had the plan in place and I knew what day this was happening. But I thought, if I keep drinking like this, I'm gonna bump my plans up sooner. So, I knew at that moment I couldn't have another drink. And again, I don't have a problem with alcohol, so this wouldn't be an issue, but I just knew that if I wanted to stick to my plan and my deadline, I couldn't have any more to drink. So this was late Sunday night, and I knew I had an appointment early Monday morning with my counselor. So, and I was going to that appointment because that's what I do, right? So, I woke up the next morning, and part of my problem too is that I don't get hungover. Never have. Even in my party days when I would drink like crazy all night and stuff, I never got hungover. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. So I woke up the next morning, physically feeling fine, mentally drained, feeling worse than I'd ever felt in my entire life. And again, nobody knew about this because anytime I talked to anybody, like Henry and I talk every single day. And anytime I talked to him, he's like, how's it going? I would just say, oh, blah. I didn't let on how bad it was because again, I didn't want to go through what I went through the year before with him trying to talk me out of this. So woke up, I went to my counselor appointment. And right away I sat down and he said, okay, how's it going? And I said, Chris, I'm done. I said, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm finished. And he looked at me and he flat out said, are you telling me that you want to die? And I said, yes. I said, not only want to, but plan to. He said, okay. He said, have you talked to Henry about this? Have you told anybody this? And I said, no. And I told him why I hadn't and stuff. And he said, so how come you're telling me this today? Now, at the time, in my frame of mind, the way I was telling him this because I was thinking it was, kind of like a patient counselor confidentiality thing that he couldn't tell anybody. As soon as I said, no, I haven't told Henry, I looked at him, I said, and you can't tell him either. Because the last year I had given him permission to talk to Henry if he wanted to. And I said, you can't. This time you can't talk to anybody. And he looked and I said, no. I said, this stays between me and you. That's what I thought at the time, of course, that this stays between the two of us. I said, so the reason I'm telling you this is A, because I don't like to cancel appointments. B, this appointment had been booked weeks in advance, and if I canceled on such short notice, someone else that needed this appointment could have had it. So I didn't. So I came. I said, and the final reason I'm telling you is because I have so much respect for you. It was kind of like a it's not you, it's me situation. I didn't want him to think that I thought he had failed me or anything. I wanted him to know that I knew he had tried very hard to help me. But it just wasn't enough this time. This was just it. So I told him all this and we talked and he asked if I had a plan and I said yes and he asked what the plan was and I'm not getting into those details in these videos, but he asked if I had a date. I didn't tell him the specific date, but I did tell him that it was not happening till after the 11th. And so he made me promise two things. Or he asked me to promise him two things at the end of this appointment. One was that I book an appointment with my family doctor, ASAP, like stat, to talk about med change. And I said, seriously, Chris, what is the point? I said, nothing is going to help at this point. I said, everything is a Band-Aid right now. I said, it has been. I said, I don't believe anything's going to change at all, ever. I said, honestly, how I feel right now is that everything we do, everything we try is just another Band-Aid on this big gaping wound that won't heal. I said, all I want to do is just rip off the bandage and just let it bleed out, honestly. He said, well, I know that's how you feel. He said, but I would still like you to promise me that you'll make the appointment to see him. Because he knows when I promise him something that I will generally do it. And he knew not to ask me to promise not to go through with my plan because, I mean, it was bad this time. It was really, really bad. So I made the promise I would do that. And he promised I would book another appointment with him for December 10th. He said he had a meeting that morning, but he was going to cancel it. He was going to clear his schedule to make sure that I got in that day. And I said, oh, I can. I said, but what is the point of that? I said, like, coming in on that day. And he said, if nothing else, just so he could say goodbye. Of course, now I know he was stalling for time. So I promised him I would come in on the 10th. Oh, sorry. And I left my appointment that day. And I was taking a bus home. Excuse me. So I called my doctor's office right at the bus stop and booked the appointment. So this was Monday. I saw him. I booked the appointment for Thursday morning, 11 o'clock. I got home and I went to sleep, lay down for a while because I was just drained. And That afternoon, Chris called me just to check and see how I was doing and to see if I'd made the appointment and everything else, and to confirm a time with me to see him on the 10th. So we did that. That was Monday. Tuesday, no, after that, he said, he said, would you consider calling the mobile crisis unit and talk to them? And I said, no. I said, my counselor has been seeing me for 10 years. My doctors see me for 10 years. They know everything. They know about all of this. I said, mobile crisis unit, I dread those questions. So tell me what's been going on, because I don't even know where to begin, and I don't have the strength or energy to explain everything. So I said, no, I'm not going to call because it's pointless right now. I can't go through all of that with them. And he said, okay, well, they might call you. He said, so you really should answer, because if you don't, otherwise they're probably just going to show up. And I said, fine. If they're going to call me, fine, whatever, but I'm not calling them. He said that he would call them and explain to them what had been happening so that they had a background of it. And I said, fine, that would help. I said, because I just can't go through this again with them. So they called me, but I told him I'm lying down for naps, so tell them not to call till later. Well, they called. I was sleeping. They left a message asking me to call back. I was not doing that. So they called again later that evening. And the frustrating part this time was, I answered it and they said who they were. And they said, we were speaking with your counselor earlier. He wanted us to give you a call. They said, we're not privy to the information that you guys, that he talked about earlier, but we just want you to know we're here. And if you need us. And I said, you're not privy to the information he talked about. And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. And she said, so you know that the service is here and if you need us. And I said, yep, good, I'm fine, yep. And I hung up. Then I called Chris, because he'd given me his work cell number. And I told him all of this. He called me back the next morning and he was really not happy. He said that is not the way it's supposed to happen. And I'm not making this video to bash the mobile crisis unit either. I know they're very helpful and I know they do a lot of good. This was just this one incident. But Chris said, Stacey, I'm so sorry. He was so upset when he heard the words not privy to the information. He said, I went over everything in detail with them so they would know exactly, so that you guys could talk about this. So he wasn't happy with that. And he said, what he did after I left my appointment on Monday, he went and talked to one of his colleagues and told her everything and said, what are your thoughts on this? And the colleague said, I'm very concerned about this. She's checking off too many of these boxes that are just not good. And she said, but you know what, maybe we're overreacting. Maybe both of us are just, blowing this out of proportion a little bit. Let me go talk to a couple other people. So she went and talked to a couple other people and came back and said, no, Chris, we're absolutely not blowing this out of proportion. This is bad. This is very serious. You have to tell her she has to go to the mobile crisis, or the CRC, Crisis Response Center. So he called me on, again, Tuesday afternoon and said, told me all of this. And he said, Stacey, I have to ask you to go to the Crisis Response Center. I said, I'm not going. And I said, same thing. I said, it's another Band-Aid, Chris. It's not going to help. I'm not going. And I can't go through all of this again with yet another person. I can't. I have no energy. I'm tired and it's pointless. So I said, no, I'm not going. And he said, okay, well, I hate to tell you this. He said, but it's out of my hands now. He said, because of the people he's talked to. He said, if you don't go, he said, excuse me, I have to call the police to come and get you and take you there. Then I was ticked. Not at him, just at the situation in general. Mostly I was starting to get mad at myself for ever telling him any of this. So he had woken me up because I was sleeping throughout the day. And so I said to him, I said, okay, you know what, give me 2 minutes and call me back. I said, I got to wake up. I have to think about this. And he paused and he said, and I said, I will answer the phone. And he said, okay, but I'm saying, Stacey, if you don't answer the phone, the next call I have to make is to the police. I said, I will answer. So he called back a couple minutes later and I said, so basically I have no choice in this. I have to go. I have to go to the Crisis Response Center. The only choice I have is how I go, right? And he said, yeah, unfortunately. So I said, fine, I'll go. And he's pretty amazing, this guy. He said, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. He said, when are you going? I said, well, I'm going to go right now, I guess. And he said, okay, well, when do you think you'll be getting there? I said, give me a minute. I'm going to look up the bus schedule. I said, I'll call you back in a minute. I looked up the bus schedule, found the bus was coming in like 10 minutes. I called him back and told him, he said, okay, now I need you to call me when you get there. He said, and I said, yeah, because you don't believe I'm going. And he said, it's not that I don't believe it. He said, but I have people to report to now. And if I don't know that you're there, he said, I have to send the police. I said, okay. So I did that. I hopped on the bus. I went there. But I asked him, I said, you have got to call them this time and go through everything again. I said, because otherwise I'm just sitting there. I said, I can't do this again. He said he promised he would. So I got there, told them why I was there. And if you've never been to the crisis response center, first they ask you to have a seat, and then they call you into this room, this triage room, and they take your vitals, blood pressure and stuff. And then they ask you all the generic questions and whatnot. And, have you been drinking today? Because they can't see you if you're intoxicated. Excuse me. And I had not had a drink. That was another thing. I told Chris about the drinking. And I said, but I'm done. I said, I stopped last night. I cannot do it anymore. And he said, and you think you can do that? And I said, oh, I know I can. I said, I don't need the alcohol. I don't crave it. I don't depend on it. I said, it was just what I was wanting to do in the moment to make myself feel something different. I said, but I'm done. So I told them that at the response center too. And so they asked again. She said, okay, so what brings you in here? And I said, did my counselor not call and tell you everything? And she said, oh, I'll have to look in the notes and stuff, but just give me a brief summary of why you're here. So I said, well, I want to kill myself. I said, I'm going to. I said, I have the plan. This is, what's happening. She's like, okay. So she took my information. She said, no, just have a seat and someone will come back and get you in a little bit. So I sat out in the waiting room. Somebody else comes and gets you. You come and you talk to them, and same thing. So what brings you here today? And by this point, I'm like ready to lose it because I'm so mad already that I'm being forced to be there when I don't want to be there. And exactly what I said was going to happen happened. So I said, I said, did my counselor not call? He said he was going to call. He was going to scan his notes or something and send it in. And he's like, oh, hang on. So he looked through the paperwork and he said, okay, actually, yes, here, we've got something. He said, this is what your counselor typed up and sent in. He said, I'm going to read it to you. And he said, you tell me back if it's true or if there's anything wrong in there. So he read the whole thing and it was 100% accurate. And it was perfect, actually, what he said. Like, it was everything that I would have wanted to say, but just couldn't. I was just too tired. So I said, yes, that's exactly it. I said, everything he said is 100% right. So we talked a little bit and, they did their usual, well, what about people in your life? And, everything that they could to try to convince me why this was not such a good idea. But there was no talking me out of it at this point. He said, okay, so I'll have a seat in the waiting room for, 10 minutes or whatever, and then the psychiatrist will come and talk to you. So I thought, okay, I have to go through this again. So yeah, but it was more than 10 minutes, but eventually somebody came out to get me. And I'm not getting into this whole subject either and stuff because this is a whole other topic, but it was a very bad experience. And not because I was in a bad mood or not in the mood to talk and stuff. Unfortunately, I had a very bad experience with the doctor that was there. And he, well, again, it's a whole other topic, but he wanted me to go to this one program. And I said, and it was going to be an 8-week-long program. It was going to take a couple weeks to get in. So basically that was 10 weeks from that point. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to be here in 10 weeks. So this is ridiculous. Why am I agreeing to this? But he wouldn't let it go. He just kept saying, I want you to go to this. I want you to go to this. So finally I said, fine, I'll go. And I said, because you want me to go, right? And hang on, sorry. And he said, no, I want you to go because you want to go. And I said, well, I don't want to go. So then we sat there saying nothing, literally nothing. Finally, I said, what do you want to hear from me? And he said, I want you to say you'll go to this program. And I said, fine, I'll go. And he said, and you're going because you want to, right? And I said, no. I said, I told you what I want. And again, we sat there and it just kind of went back and forth and it was ridiculous. And finally I said, fine, I'll go. I'll agree to go. I said, whatever it takes to get out of here. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're not being held here against your will. He said, you're free to go. He said, it was your choice to come in. And I said, actually, no, it wasn't. So I explained that to him again. Sorry, hang on. Okay, so that didn't really end too well, which was an unfortunate experience because I have been to the CRC 3 times. 2 out of those 3 times I saw this same doctor, both bad experiences. But the very first time I went there was a really good experience. And I have been told that it is very, it's so rare that I would happen to get the same doctor 2 times in a row, and he was just not helpful for me. So again, this video is not to knock the CRC, the Crisis Response Center, not at all, because it is a good place. It's helpful. It was just an unfortunate experience for me this past November. So I left there, happy to be out of there, called my counselor, told him everything, like left a voicemail, told him everything, and told him exactly how ticked I was about the whole situation. And I said, you'll be getting a report tomorrow, apparently. I said, I did what you asked, I did what you wanted, and I said that nothing's changed, and I'm not going to this program that he wants me to go to. I said, he's putting in a referral. I said, and I'm not going. So this was Tuesday. So Wednesday, my counselor got the appointment, or got the phone call, the voicemail. He called me back. Like, he was right on top of all of this. He called me Wednesday and he said, yeah, I got the report, and he agreed with me. He said it was not a good situation. He said, I'm sorry that this happened this way again, a whole other topic, but we talked some more, and he said, so you're still coming in to see your doctor tomorrow, right? You still have your appointment? And I said, yes, I will still come for that. I said, I promised you I would. He said, well, would you be willing afterwards to see the psychiatrist that you saw last year? Now, last year, November 2017, my doctor wanted me to see their shared care psychiatrist for a one-time visit, just to explain things to her and stuff, because he wanted her opinion on medication and what would be the right route to go and whatnot. So I had seen her a year before. So Chris said, would you be willing to see her again this time? On the same day, like right after your appointment with your doctor, you can go and see her. Same building. And I hesitated for a second, and he said, what if I was there with you? He said, what if I was in the appointment with you? And I said, then yes. I said, fine, I'll agree to that. I said, I'm already at the building. Fine, if that's what you want. I said, but only if you're there, because I can't go through this all over again. And he said, okay. So I went there Thursday morning, 11 o'clock, my appointment. I walked in. Now, my doctor and my counselor, it's a shared care counselor, when my counselor puts notes into the computer, my doctor has access to it right away, and vice versa. So they always know everything. When I go into each appointment, they know what I've seen from the last person. So Chris had said the notes would already be in there. So I walked in, and my doctor, Dr. Johnson, amazing doctor, he said, so things aren't going so well. And I said, nope. And he talked a little bit too and stuff, and I told him the same thing, had my plan, had my date, everything. Basically everything I've been telling you guys, I told him too. And he said, okay, well, honestly, I don't really think there's much we can do at this moment until you talk to the psychiatrist, after this appointment. And he said, because I don't want to change meds or anything. He said, I want to hear what she has to say. So I said, okay, fair enough. And the appointment wasn't for like another hour. And it had just snowed really heavily. He said, so what are you going to do in the meantime during this time? And I said, well, I was going to go to Timmy's and get a drink. I said, but now with the snow, I think I'll just sit in your waiting room. And he said, would you feel more comfortable staying in this room, in the patient room? And I said, if that's okay. So he was really great. He let me stay in there. So I played a game on my phone just to pass the time and stuff. Then they brought in forms I had to fill out for the psychiatrist. And right on the very first page that it says, if you are thinking of harming yourself or others, everything is confidential unless you are thinking of harming yourself or others. And then we have the right to say whatever. Now, again, I should have, now the way I am thinking and everything, of course, I know my counselor would have to say something if I told him I had these thoughts and these plans. But at the moment when I was telling him, I really didn't think he could tell anybody. At this point, when I'm reading these forms, I'm thinking, yeah, I know what's coming. So they called me in, and my counselor was there, Chris was there, and we went over things, and it, I was miserable, feeling horrible, and as soon as the doctor said, well, Stacey, we have to admit you, because you're not safe to be on your own, then I was not a happy camper. Let's put it that way. I was not very nice. I said something about, well, but I have my business to run and stuff. And she said, your business isn't as important as your life. And I said, well, maybe not to you. And It was bad. I was really upset. And I looked at Chris and I said to him, whew, to this day I regret this, but before she said I had to be admitted and stuff, I said to the doctor, I said to the psychiatrist, I said, what do you care if I live or I die? I said, seriously, I said, how does this affect your life? I said, I know you're a doctor, you're supposed to, protect people's lives and stuff. I said, but what does it really matter to you? I said, your life goes on. You don't even know me. I said, like, this makes no difference. And she said, well, but of course you're still a human being and, want to take care of people and stuff. And I said, look, I'll even sign a liability waiver or something. I said, I'll sign whatever you want, saying that, yes, you tried to talk me out of this so that there's no legal action on you guys. Like, that's where I was at. That's how bad it was. And then I looked at my counselor and I asked him the same thing. I said, why does it really matter to you if I live or die? How does your life really change? And I'll never forget the look on his face. And he said, do you really need to ask me that? And I said, yeah, I do. I said, life is going to go on for you. You have, your wife, your kids. Your life is the same once you leave this building. And he said, because Stacey, I do care about you. He said, and we have this, doctor-patient relationship we've had for 10 years. He said, of course I care about you and I don't want anything to happen to you. I asked my doctor the same question too, when I was in with him. And he said the same thing. He said, I've been seeing you for 10 years, Stacey. He said, I know you quite well. So it was then that the psychiatrist said, okay, well, we're going to have to admit you. And not happy at all. Really not happy. But there was nothing I could do about it. I was told either somebody had to come and get me then, or they had to call the police. But I was not allowed to leave that place on my own. So the psychiatrist said, I'm going to step out of the room and go make the bed arrangements, figure out which hospital you're going to, and I'll be back. So then I was in there with Chris, and he said, okay, so do you have someone you want to come get you, or do you want me to call the police? And at this point I thought, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I am going, and that means Henry will find out about it. So I said, and I don't want to waste the police's resources. I mean, really not for this. There's nothing I could do about it. Why have them called? So I said, Henry can know. And he said, do you want to call him? And I said, no, I can't. He said, okay, I'll call him. So he called, and I could hear on the other end of the line, his landlord answered and said, no, he's sleeping right now. And Chris said, it's really urgent. If you could go wake him up. And so he started to tell him what was going on, and I could hear Henry's voice in the background. I heard him say, I knew it. I knew something was up. He said, I had no idea it was this bad. He said, but I knew things weren't good. So yes, of course, he said he'd come and get me. So he showed up, and I started bawling because I felt so bad that I hadn't included him or hadn't told him anything. And he just hugged me and said, don't even worry about it. He said, we just have to get you better. Oh. Okay, so my counselor stayed with me the whole time till Henry got there. And I said to him, don't you have other appointments or anything or things you need to do? Nope. He said, I've cleared my afternoon for this. So I can say without a doubt that my counselor 100% saved my life. Because I had the plan. I had the date. I wanted it to happen. It was happening. And because of his persistence, because of his heart, because of who he is, he didn't give up on me. And I'm glad he didn't. But at the time, I was pretty damn pissed. The last thing I said to him as I was walking out of the room, I said, because actually I was mad at myself. I was so mad at myself for starting all of this on the Monday when I told him. I should have just said nothing. In my mind, that's what I was thinking. And last thing I said to him as I was walking out was, I'm not happy with you, but I'm not mad at you. And he kind of smiled and he said, would it be okay? He said, if I give you a hug? And I said, of course. So he gave me a hug. And then Henry took me to the hospital. So this part one video was way longer than I had thought it was going to be, but I guess there was a lot more I had to say. So I'm going to end this here, and I'm going to move on to part two. If you want to watch it, or if you want to watch these videos later, I'm sharing all of this because this is so important. We have to talk about this, because I wouldn't be here right now. It's a scary thought now. Now it's a scary thought, but it's very, very true that Stacey Clausen would no longer exist if I hadn't said something. So we got to talk about this a lot more. And that's what my next couple videos are about, are of the different services out there and what I went through at the hospital and then my recovery. So I hope that you will watch this whole video if you started it from the beginning, if you're just joining in. And I hope you watch the other videos after too. And I really hope that everybody, I'm going to try to make these videos public to share. I think I can do that. I want to be able to share them because I want everybody to share all of this. I'm not embarrassed by any of this. This is my life. This is what's been happening. And if I can help anybody else with this, then I really want to. So yeah, please watch these videos and please share them with everybody. So I'm going to end this one and I'm going to start part two next. Okay, bye guys.